And welcome back to your NHL Preview Extravaganza, joined again by Dan Fabrizi. We covered the Western Conference a little bit ago, and now it's time for the Eastern Conference. And Eastern Conference is a little stronger than it was last year, especially in the Atlantic Division. 4 teams got into the playoffs, and of course, the Pittsburgh Penguins won that division. They went to the Stanley Cup, where, of course, they lost to Detroit in 6 games. But this year, they do come back, ready to defend that Eastern Conference. And let's get right into it, Dan. Pittsburgh, they did lose a lot of players in the offseason. A lot of that chemistry was lost. Talk about the additions and subtractions this offseason.
Okay, we'll start from the top, and we'll take Marian Hossa because he was the biggest loss this season. But let me try to make you Pittsburgh fans feel better about losing Hossa and the rest of the people we lost. He didn't do much to help the Penguins get that 2 seed. He came in late in the season with only playing with Crosby, I think, 7 games due to injury. You know, Miro Sertan is not a bad replacement. You know, since 2000, Miro has 199 goals. That's nothing to overlook. He's not going to be Marian Hossa, but he'll be sufficient enough that I think Penguin fans really won't be missing Marian Hossa that much midway through the season. You know, you lose Malone, you lose the leadership, but let's be honest, Ryan Malone was not worth a $31 million contract. He wasn't worth it. He underproduced up until last year in a contract year when he had 27 goals. He benefited from playing with Malkin and Sikora and playing on the top power play line. I think Jordan Staal, who will be a Selke finalist in the next couple of years, will fill in just fine. Like I said, Malone's leadership was there, but I think Jordan Staal will step up and take his position. You look at LaRock, Hall, Roberts, not really big offensive. You know, Roberts and Hall missed most of the season. Roberts did nothing in the playoffs after Game 1 against Ottawa. They got good replacements. You got Matt Cook to replace Jarkko Ruutu. You know, they have the replacements. Eric Goddard will replace LaRock. He'll be fine. You know, they might take a minor step back, but I don't think it's going to be enough that's really going to slow this team down.
All right, let's take a look at the. You know, you lost 2 main players. You touched upon Malone and Hossa.
Yeah.
You got Sertan and Fedotenko in return. If you look at the graphic here and you see the stats, the numbers just don't add up. But do you think they're going to add up this year?
They could. Like I said, Sertan is a producer when you put people around him. And when you put Sidney Crosby on the line with anybody, they're going to get some goals. When Sertan played in Buffalo, he averaged 40-some goals a year. I do not see any reason why Sertan won't reach that point this year.
All right, so...
and Fedotenko has the experience. Fedotenko won a cup at Tampa Bay as well, so the experience is there.
All right, so on the offensive side, you think things are going to be okay. On the defensive side, this team last year had one of the best defenses in the National Hockey League.
Right.
Something that you couldn't say unless you go back to the days of Constantine, but those days are long gone. Of course, this team is built around their offense, but the defense has stepped up. Fortunately, they are without their 2 top defensemen, as we all know, but 2 young defensemen are going to come in there, Letang and Goligoski.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to replace the 2 blue liners. I mean, Gonchar is a Norris finalist every year. You can't replace it, but to be honest, in 2 years, Gonchar probably won't be with the Penguins. So this is Letang and Goligoski's time to step up and produce and make that power play work and hold down the blue line until those guys get back.
All right, it's one of those seasons where can they get back to the Stanley Cup final? I don't know if you're a stat geek, you can look back and say a lot of teams don't make it back once they've lost, but we're going to find out this season. It's a good team once again. All right, let's move on to another Atlantic Division foe, and that'd be the New York Rangers. And of course, they had some trouble keeping some players out of the new Russian Super League, whatever that league's called. They lost Jaromir Jagr and Martin Straka to the new league. They want the big bucks, but they did get some good players in return.
They did. Marcus Naslund, you know, his point total has declined the last 3 seasons, but I expect him, if he plays with Gomez and Dubinsky, his point total will go up. And Nikolai Zherdev, if anybody watched this guy last year on a line with Rick Nash, this guy can light it up. And he already has started this year. He has like 4 points in the first 3 games already. This guy can light it up. I think New York maybe takes a half a step back. Not one that's very noticeable, because let's be honest, Jagr is a phenomenal player. He's an elite player. But I think Naslund and Zherdev will fill in nicely for the Rangers.
And it's nice because, I mean, Naslund is up there, but you had Jagr and Straka basically kind of wiltering out of their prime.
Right.
You get a guy like Zherdev, who he's going to play with Scott Gomez, who, granted, Nash is a good player, but he's not a passer. He's not going to give Zherdev the puck.
Right.
Gomez is that type of player who's going to put it on the stick and he's going to bury it. So that's a great pickup for them.
I agree.
Of course, Wade Redden too. So that's also going to help out the defense a little bit. But what about the goaltending here? I mean, this guy, Lundqvist.
Yeah.
What about
Henrik the Great? He's been a Vezina finalist, 3 years in a row. Can't get past Brodeur, but I mean, he's phenomenal, and I really don't see him going back. I expect much of the same that he's been doing since he came into the league.
You know, It's going to be a challenge this year for the Rangers as always, but that goaltending, I think that's something that they don't have to worry about.
They're going to be a tough team, there's no doubt.
Continuing moving on down the ranks of the Eastern Conference Atlantic Division, and let's move on to the New Jersey Devils, where, of course, we don't like to watch them on TV or go to the games because they make us fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I dream of goals and everything that is entertaining, and I don't receive that when I watch the New Jersey Devils, but they consistently get the job done. This year, are they going to do it again?
Somebody forgot to tell the Devils that it's not 1994 with getting Brian Rawson and Bobby Holik back on their team, but I mean, as long as they got Marty Brodeur, they're going to contend, and they're going to annoy us as long as he's around.
Yeah.
Marty Brodeur is up for 3 records this year. Most games played, most wins, most shutouts. I think he'll get all 3 this year, and as much as we don't want to say it, New Jersey's going to be there at the end of the season. They're going to annoy us 82 games and through the playoffs as well.
Yeah, and take a look. If you haven't followed the Waugh and Brodeur comparisons throughout the year, I mean, look at this graphic. Look at this. He is destroying Waugh right now. It's unbelievable, and the guy is so consistent. He's a stand-up goalie. That's the beauty of the thing. He's a stand-up goalie. He's able to stay away from the injuries. The butterflies are more susceptible to groin injuries, but this guy, he's going to break 3 records this year, and good for him. All right, he's a class act. He'll bless money to stay with.
We don't like him, but there's nothing wrong with him either.
Brodeur.
He's a great player, a great guy.
All right, finally in that Atlantic Division, let's touch upon Philadelphia real quick. 1 or 2 points stand. But again, nothing much in the offseason, but they do get one key player back this year.
They lost Jason Smith on defense, but they got Simone Gagne back, and I think he is maybe 1 or 2 best players on Philadelphia. If Simone Gagne produces, Mike Richards are going to produce, Carter's going to produce. Those guys will produce, but if they get that extra contribution from Simone Gagne, they're going to be dangerous. Now, the only problem I see with the Flyers is, can Marty Biron and Antero Niittymaki carry them through this season? The Philly fans like to say Biron played great through the playoffs. Well, I didn't really see too much out of him in the Penguins series. They gave up a few weak goals, and that's my thing with Philly. If the goaltending's there, they're going to be tough. If it's not there, then they might finish in 4th again.
I've never been a fan of Niittymaki, but Marty Biron, I've liked him in Buffalo. I thought he deserved a starting role. He's in Philadelphia. He did good last year. I thought that trade was the return of Philadelphia. It was to get to the Eastern Conference Final.
A lot of potential. There's
a lot of potential there, but there are questions as can he sustain the #1 role in this NHL?
Yep.
All right, let's move on to another division, the one with Montreal and Boston. And Boston, wow! Everyone is saying that they're going to have a great team this year. You know what? I don't think me or Dan is going to disagree.
Not at all.
Why, Dan?
You get a healthy Patrice Bergeron back. He's one of the most complete forwards in the Eastern Conference. You got him playing with Phil Kessel, Marco Stern, Savard. You could throw him anywhere in there, and he adds more depth to that scoring. And if anybody hasn't seen this kid, Blake Wheeler, look out for him because he is something special. I saw him score a goal in that first game. He just let one rip from the slot. This kid is legit. And Steven Stamkos better watch out for the Calder because this kid could really play.
All right, let's talk about the goaltending real quick. And Manny Fernandez and Tim Thomas, both 34 years old. All right, they're getting up there. They're going to platoon this year, I think. Is that going to be an issue for them this year?
I think it will. I think if anything slows Boston down, it's going to be their goaltending. It could be their defensemen because after Chara and Wideman, they're a little thin, but I think the burden rests on Tim Thomas and Manny Fernandez to carry the load. They brought Fernandez in to carry the load. Hasn't produced yet, but if the goaltending comes through, Boston is going to be dangerous.
Yeah, and I'm a believer in Manny Fernandez. I've liked him in Minnesota. He was a great goaltender in Minnesota. He comes to Boston, and I think he could steal that starting job from Tim Thomas if he starts to slip. So look out for that Boston team this year.
Yeah.
We'll get to our rankings here at the end of the segment. You'll have a little surprise, I'm sure.
I do have one
for the final standings.
I do.
Right, let's go on to Montreal real quick, and I think that they're going to have a great competition with Boston this year. What do you think about them this year?
Yeah, when you add the likes of Alex Tanguay and Robert Lang to a team that already has Kovalev and the Kostitsins, I mean, the scoring on this team is ridiculous, and they have great defense and Andrei Markov. This team is going to be there in the end. It's going to come down to Montreal and Boston. It's going to be a dogfight to the end.
And who is going to be the focal point this year for Montreal?
Chris, you know who it's going to be. It's going to be the youngest goaltender in the league, and Carey Price.
What happened last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, Carey Price went through he played great in the first series. It took him to 7 games. He played well, but when Philly came around, the age showed through, and he let in a few weak goals, and the confidence went straight down. If Carey Price is the goalie everybody expects him to be, Montreal should win this division. If he turns into the youngest goalie in the league again like he did in the playoffs, I think Boston can overtake him.
Exactly.